Hey guys, it's me again. This time, unlike the Magnifica video, I'm going to be talking about some of the other, deck theory ratios and updates that I made. This is going to be a general video for, everything that I've learned from when I started playing the deck to now. And it's not going to be over just Exosister cards. I'll be including stuff like the shifters, the retaliating seas, just like a general guide to Exosisters and what I've learned. It's not going to be super in depth, but it's not really a guide. Yeah, it's hard to explain, but I'm just going to be talking about my thoughts on the deck with the ratios and stuff like that. So 3LS is obviously I think the best ratio because she's the best Exosister to special summon herself, right? Stella's can be impermed, it can be ashed, it can be gammaed, or it can't be ashed, it can be veilered. Imperm, veiler, gamma, all that good stuff, right? Well, this one can only be gamma. So it's just much better at playing around hand traps. It doesn't lose to as many hand traps, so it plays as many of her as possible. Not to mention, once Malfa releases in the TCG, she's a target to summon off of Malfa, so you need her as soon as possible. You need as many of her. Irene and Sophia. So Irene has a lot to do with how many Vadis you're playing. If you're playing one Vadis, I think you cut Irene entirely. I'm going to talk a bit about Vadis later, but Irene and Sophia specifically are very closely tied to how many Vadis you're playing. I think if you're playing 3 Vadis, you need to play 3 Sophia, just because of how often you're going to turbo through the Exosisters. That being said, I think that 3 Vadis is incorrect. So yeah, I think that Irene specifically should be as little as possible. She's not good. She goes net even, right? So to use Irene, you have to tuck a card back and then you draw one. And so that means that you're going net even for card advantage, but it has to be an Exosister card that you tuck back. And you're tucking back what is a good card most of the time. You're only tucking back if you have 2 Paxes in hand, or if you have a Sophia that you can't summon, right? She's not going to unbrick you like some other normal summons might. If you normal summon a no punk, you have a full combo. It doesn't matter how dog water your hand is, as long as you didn't draw your hard Garnet Auroradon. If you're playing an Auroradon Garnet, it's good. So yeah. For Sophia, I think that the mistake that a lot of people who pick up this deck make is thinking that Sophia is the be all end all. She's nice, but the more that I play with her, the more I dislike that I feel like I need to play her, because you're always trying to weave Sophia into your combo routes to gain the advantage back that you're losing elsewhere, and that's unfortunate because it means that your deck can't maintain advantage. And so Sophia you want to play, I think 2 of is the ideal number. If you're playing 1 Vadis, you could probably get away with 1, but I think 2 is just best because it allows you to search it twice if you're only playing 1 Vadis, which is really good. And sometimes it's still a good normal summon when you're playing all of these special summon extenders. So I think that it's very good. But 2 is the right amount, because if you have more than that, it's too many normal summons in the deck, right? Because this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 normals, right? 7 if you count Irene. I count Snow as a normal because I consider it a combo starter with all of these. You never want to be normaling Irene, so I don't count it as a normal, but it's basically 7 normal summons. And so I think that if you're playing what is now 8 normal summons in the deck, you're likely to brick on a normal summon, and that's not good. 3 Stella. Stella's good, obviously, but you have to have an Exosister in hand. She's kind of hard if you don't open her to get on the field. She's a bit clunky. So yeah. You still play 3. She's just too good. Like, especially summoning an Exosister from hand, one of these, right, is just so cracked. Like, just being able to be like, normal Stella, Special Sophia, draw 1 card. Like, you go +1, and then you make your Mikulace, you go +2, basically. You lose a body, though, so it's basically +1. Yeah. 2 Arment, sorry. Old OCQ translations got me tripping. So, sorry, yawn. If I could cut Arment down, I would. I think it's the best way to put it. I kind of don't like playing too many going second cards because you got like this is gonna do a deck theory, but like you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And I think that's just the right amount for this deck. I think if you have any more, I mean, technically you have 13 with Pank, obviously. But like, you can go up to like 14 or 15. I'll often swap out like a Sophia or an Irene for an evenly matched, you know. But Arment is the other thing that I'll often find myself swapping out. That's because it's never fucking live. It's only live against like DPE, Phantom Knight, but Phantom Knight isn't good. Maybe VW. Maybe VW. Yeah, but like, it's just not live against so many goddamn decks. It's just not worth it in the least. That being said, it is so nice because it outs annoying fucking counter traps. It's also, or annoying continuous traps. It's also a way to dodge effects, which this deck desperately needs ways to play around hand traps. And that's why it's good. Not because it's like not because it's like a special, like, sort of, like, it's got some magic to it. No, it's just a way that, like, means you don't lose to a single imperm. And, like, you don't want to be playing more copies of Vadis because there's no guarantee your opponent plays into Vadis. But Arment is like you push it, you know, like you have the initiative. So while I hate that it's only your opponent's turn, this card is growing on me, and I'm unironically starting to think, like, I know I rag on it. I ragged on it very much, but I don't think that's like necessarily fair. I think it's a very good card. The problem is that, like, it's not live on your turn, and that's what's really annoying. This deck would be insane if Arment was live on your turn, but it's not. Yep. But, like, in comparison to Vadis, right? Vadis is great for plussing you, right? So Vadis gives you the pluses, but it lacks a lot of initiative. Arment is like less plus, but more initiative, and so, like, I think Arment is better, right? Because, like, with Vadis you have a much higher ceiling, and that ceiling is like fucking insane, you know? You get like 2 XZ monsters, which lets you search twice on your next turn. Then you can make a Utopic Draco Future, and you're just boom, 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 boom. You know, you're popping off. But Arment, you only get 1 search, but you get a proactive, like, lock out of the graveyard. And that's just so important, I think, in, like, a follow-up turn. Especially if you're going second and your opponent doesn't need to play out of the graveyard because they've already established their resources. Arment is just better and better. So, well, like, you know, I talk bad on the card, obviously. But I think it's very good. Packs. This card is fucking insane. There's nothing I can say about that, right? It's 800 for a Rhoda that special summons. Oh, it's also not just a Rhoda. It searches you your other spells and traps too. Like, so fucking good. Play as many as possible. If you could play 5 of this card, I would. In a heartbeat. I'd, like, cut an Irene, cut a Sophia for 2 more of this card. Any day of the week. the card that made me wanna make this video, Vadis. I'm making this video because I'm considering cutting Vadis to 1. And the reason that I'm considering that is that I never find myself trying to search it ever on the second turn. I think it's just not that great. And I can't believe I'm saying this because I like raved about this card. But the more I play with it, the more I'm just like, this card is mid at best. Like at first glance it seems insane, right? Because like I was talking about earlier, in comparison to Armament, you get insane pluses off this card, right? Because if it resolves, you can go into like Caspatel and like Osophiel, or like Mikolas and Osophiel, and so you get like a search, you get a bounce, you get Utopic Draco Future, and like if you want to, you can then make a format Zeus. Just insane, you know. It's also an access code by itself, right? Because if it resolves, you go Mikolas and like an Osophiel, or like a Caspatel, or like a Caspatel and Osophiel, and then you search a monster, you search packs to get a monster, you then make these two into Lina, or like you just go all 3 into Selene, like the monster you summoned, and then you have counters, and then you get to access code. Boom. Yeah. So like it's insane. If it resolves fully, it never resolves fully. Like, I think that's just like kind of a conclusion that I've come to accept as I'm like climbing the ladder. I think it's just not worth it. The moment that people sort of like get an understanding of this deck, it's like awful. Because then they just go, okay, battle phase, and beat over your monsters. You know, they just go, okay, blah blah blah, right? Like problems that I talk about in my like problems with Exosister videos. And so, while I like this card at 2, I often side it out. I often side out these 3 in like an Armament, like these 4, for what is 1, 2, 3, and then like I would side in the Cosmic or the Red Reboot, just depending on what I felt like. You know, maybe the draw unlock going first. You side out a lot of the hand traps. So like, I think that unfortunately these targets are the easiest to look at cutting. The special summoners. So I have like a list on my Google Doc that you all can see up here in the corner of like just a bunch of fucking special summoners. I don't have it pulled up, so you know, no leaks, but I think Dynatherium is the best. I love this card. If your opponent isn't paying attention and they get greedy, you just trigger your Exosisters. Or you can just like if it's like turn 3 and you said Vadis and they like didn't trigger it, and then you go like, oh, I will special Dynatherium, and they just forget about Vadis. Boom. You know? Yeah. It's very good. Obviously, the problem with all of these is that, you can't use more than one of them, or like you can't control more than one of them, so you basically are stuck playing 2 of each. Ranryu. So Ranryu and Gigabyte make up a resource engine that I'm really fond of, because you can kind of slam them into each other and summon out more, right? So you can go Gigabyte into like a wind, like you can go Gigabyte into like a spent Mechaba, Gigabyte effect special Ranryu special back Gigabyte attack special out like another Gigabyte, or no, you can't special out another Gigabyte, you special out like another Ranryu, and then Ranryu Ram, and then special out like a Gigabyte to special out like an Inari or Nefarious, which is 4 cards for Snow, which is insane. So yeah, that's basically where I'm at. Also, if Nefarious pops it, it triggers. It's also just like a big fucking beater. Oh, the best thing about these 2 is that they're wins. I'm gonna say that because Barrier Statue, you know. Yeah, just as a side note. But yeah, that's really all I have to say about the special summoners. Remember Nefarious and remember Inari's effects. Yeah, that's about it. I'm probably gonna be making another tech video soon, by the way. But there's just something that I want to talk about because I think it's an interesting idea. But DD Sprite. So DD Sprite allows you to get into like Hulk Aurora on lines. Because during your next standby phase, you can turn the monster to the field. So maybe there's something there. You could also do something stupid like the 10 Ys, but there's just some shenanigans lying around with this deck, I think. Oh, I can't spell. Well, there we go. So next we're going to talk about our going second cards. I made a video about Snow, so I'm not going to talk about that too much. You obviously got Called by the Grave, Harpies, Vadis, are just good generic cards. So 3D Shifter, this card is probably the best card in the deck. Unfortunately, it's just insane. Like Pax is actually just fucking cracked, right? But like D Shifter is like maybe like a third better, because like just D Shifter just annihilates so many decks. Yeah. So there's that. It's just insane. Not to mention with Snow, you can trigger it twice. So yeah, gotta love to see it. Retaliating Sea. I'm like being more and more pilled on this card the more I play it, and like it's so ridiculous. I shouldn't like this card. I don't mean like it's ridiculous in the fact that it's good. I mean I shouldn't like this card. This card is not good. But it's a level 4 that special summons itself on your opponent's turn that is also a macrocosmos. While this deck pretends to care about the graveyard, it does not. Macros are really fucking good. I'm playing as many of them as possible. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, basically. It does turn off Infib, but I was not liking Imperm that much anyways, so might end up cutting this anyways. Pank. Pank is good. It hasn't come up that much because I just don't draw it that often, but I love it. Just the ability to slap down a big body is just so great. It's also a threat. It's just very good. Yeah. So those are my thoughts mainly on the main deck monsters. The side deck, there's a lot less thought put into it. Not less, but just the side deck is, I'd say, building a side deck isn't super hard for this deck, right? Because you just need your going second blowout cards, your trolls, your evenlies. You want your going first, staples, your solemns and your macro. You got your going second anti-spell cards, and then I had basically a slot, and I was more access to Snow is good. As for the extra deck ratios, this is something that I've talked about a lot in my Snow video for why I'm playing 2 Lina. One is to switch Snow, and the other is to go for this line here. This line I think is pretty self-explanatory. Gaga, Utopic Future, Utopic Draco Future. This is pretty self-explanatory. Yeah. But as for the Exosister monsters, I am considering cutting a second Osophiel for a third Mika Lace. I originally cut the third Mika for the second Lina, but I'm just not using 2 Osophiel that often. It comes up, but yeah, if you're getting to the point where you need more than 2 and more 2 Caspitels, I feel it's just not the game's not going to be going in your favor. I'm going to keep 2 in for a while just to see how I feel. Gibberine is very good. However, it's only good in very certain situational scenarios. But you're never going to complain about it in the gate. As for Caspitel, Monster Searcher is very good. I rarely ever find myself using its graveyard effect. I think I only ever came up once against Infernoble Knights. Yeah, that's really about it. It comes up against PK too, I guess, but Osophiel is just better because then you can't then they can't Fog Blood, or then they can't what's the name of it? Boots or Torn Scales in Graveyard, or not Torn Scales, the other one, that Cloak, Boots or Cloak, which this one doesn't. And then 2 Mika Lace, like I said, considering a third. I wanted to talk about why no Carpe Diem. Unfortunately, this card is just not good. 1. This is a useless effect. Neither player can target Exosisters with the monster you control, especially from the graveyard. But nothing special summons from the graveyard and targets in this format. Literally nothing. I can't think of a single card off the top of my head. If you see summon an Exosister monster, you get you get to Azathoth a card basically. Azathoth is good, but the good thing about Azathoth was that you could go into it on your turn and stop all hand traps. You can only stop 1. It's just not worth it. Like, if you're really worried about nib, I suppose, maybe, but it's also just not that worth. Plus, your opponent can chain to it, because this is cost. So, like, it doesn't really matter. And then, like, you don't really need to pop spell traps that much. Like, you have Cosmics for a reason. Anyways, it looks like DB is telling me that it is time to end the video. Remember to check out my Twitter. Have a great day.